Itamar Friedman, co-founder and CEO of Qodo. Welcome to the Insight Jam.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here.
Well, these kind of conversations are fascinating for us because obviously AI is the hottest topic of them all. And you have an interesting take on how you're implementing AI on behalf of, well, I guess developers, right? I mean, talk a little bit about what Qodo is and how you came about building.
Sure. So Qodo is a quality-focused coding platform that enables busy professional developers to exploit AI for not only generating code, but mostly for code review, code testing. As we established Qodo 2 or 3 months BC before ChatGPT, we saw how fast technology is being built, and we understood that simple software is probably going to be generated quite easily, not necessarily in end of 2022, but we knew it will come. But then help using AI to solve for complex software, that's what we're aiming to do at Qodo. We thought that you must focus on exploiting AI for code review and code testing, right? Because you don't want to have AI write tens of lines of codes with no human review and just simple test like checking it and then push that complex software to production, and only then knowing that your millions of users or whatever suffering from problem in transportation, financial services, whatever. So when we started Qodo, we realized that focusing on code review and code testing is our mission. We want to enable rapid software development with confidence, also for complex software.
So is this agentic, for lack of a better term, as the code review functionality? I mean, is it AI agents that are doing that code review?
Yeah, definitely. So it goes like this. If you think about bugs and issues in software, it's basically a death by 1,000 cuts. I mean that there are so many different types of issues and bugs that you need to find if you really want AI to be able to catch the majority of them. And you can't do that just from one specific place. And you can't necessarily being able to have enough compute on runtime. You can't let the developer wait for the AI to finish the analysis and tell you all the bugs and issues that could be in your software. So basically, we're talking about integrating AI agents throughout the entire software development lifecycle, where some of the interfaces, with a conversation, whether real time or semi-real time, happen in a minute. But in some cases, the agents are running, for example, in the background, or when you open a pull request, you're about to merge your code, and just before that, or as part of your CI/CD process. That's the only way we think that we would be able to exploit AI in this tedious and important critical task of finding bugs and issues for complex software.
How does it operate in place of what is currently the standard? So is it and forgive me, I'm not a coder, but is the standard right now for that level of code review and code testing basically a human function with one particular team kind of going through and grinding through the code independent of the developers and kind of reviewing the whole thing? Is it as simple as that? And now the agents can do it with, in theory, that much more perspective, I guess, or?
Yeah. So if you zoom out for a second and think about, roughly speaking, on software development, there is the V-shape software development methodology where you start, the top left of the V is planning, the bottom of the V is implementation, and the top right is review and verification, right? And the planning is you use tools like Jira, Figma, Linear, etc. The implementation, you use the IDEs, but also all the code generation tools that there are there, and many of them are really successful, and there are different kind of them. Some helps you tap, complete more lines of code, and some help you try to build an entire application, especially if it's a simple software. It's already possible. And what we're talking here, when we're dealing with code, is actually the last part, the review and the test. And right now, it's mostly done manual work. So that's very important that we automate that. I'm not saying there aren't tools, but practically there are thousands of those tools and no one holistic solution. Why? Because it's freaking hard to build that technology. That's the last mile. I don't think it's 1 mile, but just for the phrasing, it's the last mile of solving software development. If we are able to give a complete like assurance that this software that was written is well, not only like functionally working as expected according to the intent, but well organized, maintained, tested, etc., then we basically solve software. Okay, so it's a really hard technology to do, and it takes time. But fortunately, like first, we're very eager to do that, and we're running really fast, and also we are ourselves using or dog fooding ourselves, so things are progressing. And at the point where we will not necessarily, we don't have to reach to the final, 100% assurance, but once we reach like high percentage of assurance, then we're going to start seeing automation of software development as we never seen before, and most importantly for complex software. So basically, like TLDR for what your question is, like there's a bunch of tools, but frankly, bottom line, mostly human labor, trying to solve for this tedious task of code review and code testing, which is the last mile in my opinion for two things. First, the software development lifecycle before you merge the code, and the V-shape. And second, for what's not solved yet in software development.
Yeah, so I'm not a coder, but I have been in sales, and it strikes me that the pitch here is very much around, and it strikes me that that is the one kind of siren song of AI, is that it is so deep that when it is reviewing code like that, it can access so much deep knowledge to code check that it's right more often than a human.
Yeah.
Is that
so? So it's a good part, and it's a part of the question I didn't answer. Like, let's think about Google, for example. Like even before the era of AI, although like if you think about it, it's also kind of artificial intelligence. What Google is doing for 20 years now. Look, it's basically if we want to search something, then we would go to libraries. If you remember those days, and we're not so bad, but it takes us a lot of time to go all over this let's say library. And let's think about it as code, as even when, by the way, we had computers where we can like search different parts of where I can find which book or whatever. They're like more modern library. So the same here, like we do have like IDEs and different tools to crawl through the code base. But when you're talking about complex software, it's actually could be tens of thousands of repositories, code repositories, could be hundreds of millions of lines of code. And it's quite hard for developers, especially, not necessarily the tech lead that is here in the company for 5 years, rather someone mid-seniority that arrived like half year ago to really do a good job and high quality code and good reviewing. So that there is a lot of potential for AI, which is able to grasp and crawl and analyze also semantically now with AI, with the latest LLM technology through this like huge code bases. So I definitely agree with you that that where we're talking about scale is definitely where AI can eventually help us do better job together.
So who are you finding is receptive to that story? I mean, where are you finding traction? Where are you starting to sell licenses and having success?
Yeah, roughly speaking, let's say that there's two type of companies. I know I'm like a bit simplifying here, but there's one type. One type is move fast and break things. I'm quoting Mark Zuckerberg from the early days of Facebook, and many companies are that. For example, startups. First you want to make sure that you bring value, and then like you make sure it's matured for your user or whatever. By the way, it is depend. Like if you're building a startup around financial, services, maybe you want to harden your software from day one. But roughly speaking, then and by the way, I think it's like a big part of the market is like that, 40%, whatever. And
Well,
then
and again, I think that because ultimately you're more affordable and potentially more reliable than anything that they can scale at the size they are currently, as they're trying to build that first,
yeah, yeah, but my
first.
claim is that those when that type of company move fast and break things, potentially are buyer or users of ours, but the ICP, the ideal client profile, are those actually that want to move fast without breaking things. And if you think right, and there are a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
That
see
can't afford to break things. I mean,
right,
that's part of the brand is they're
right.
not going to have release anything broken.
Exactly. So if you think about e-commerce, financial institution, healthcare, security, that one moment a year ago where I don't want to name of the company
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
no,
not
yeah,
nice, but that one bug like caused transportation, flights,
I
financial
remember
service.
something about that.
So if you're pushing your developers to use AI to write more lines of code, and if you check, by the way, the amount of bugs per line of code is not reduced, if not going actually higher, then it means that you're having more bugs. So you have to use AI to also help you on the reviewing and the testing part if you want to move fast with confidence. So that's part of the market that really like interesting for us, and we're interesting for them. And maybe one last thing is uh, that we do have like an open core strategy. I mean, a lot of what we're building is open source. So like a lot of companies can try some of our services, and then we get a bank calling us, calling us one Friday, hey, we finished checking your open source, really loved it. We saw the enterprise offering has more. Sorry for the shameless plug here, but it just fits. And
Feel free.
and yeah, and then like, okay, we see the offering in enterprise, like we're looking for something that, and the open source, it's not there, it's an enterprise, so we're here to buy. Like it's very similar to, if you think we are at the state that is very similar to the state of Databricks, where they were like after 2-3 years, where they have Spark and it was working really well for them open source wise. But then, they were, I don't know, stuck on the 1 million ARR for a year or two, between year 2 to 3, if I remember correctly. And then they realized they must build a platform that is out of the open source. They needed to switch in CEO for that. I hope in our case we don't need to, because I'm the CEO here. So that's what I hope.
Well, it worked out for them.
Yeah, but anyway, like we're coming to it like in advance with this strategy, and so I hope we don't need to change the CEO. And now we're building, like now, I mean the last half year, building after like having a successful open source move where dozens of Fortune 500 companies are using our open source, and then we're getting into the building a lot of features around the enterprise, and those like Fortune 500, if you think about them as an example, a big portion of them, they do want to move fast. It's not like some of them don't care maybe, but actually quite a lot of them are in a state where they don't want to be disrupted. And there's a lot of movement in the market right now, so they're actually starting to move much faster than I'm used to. And in order to do that without losing confidence in what they're building, that's why they're interested in Qodo.
Is there kind of an industry standard expectation around that last part of the V, where everyone expects a certain amount of bugs to be fixed or code to be cleaned? Or, I mean, is there kind of an expectation there, regardless of the size of the company, that's always going to be at a certain percentage of required repair or recoding, just because of the way software development ends up? And so you're kind of coming in a classic problem that everybody is always going to have. Is there an expectation there?
Yes, no, it's complicated. I'll explain. So basically, there are some standards for example, code coverage is a metric. It has a few embodiments, but like could be line coverage, branch coverage. I'm not going to get that technical, but code coverage means how many lines of code, putting it simple in simple words, how many lines of code of yours, and percentage, for example, are covered with tests. So there are some standards. For example, some industries would like 80%, some industries would like 90%. If you're in the, I don't know, military or sending stuff to space. Maybe you'd like 99% or more, by the way. So that's one standard. But first, by the way, just looking on this specific metric, code coverage, some people would say it's a proxy. I think most people, but some would even say it's a vanity metric. I can explain why, but I want to use this like example in saying that there are some standards, but it's actually a bit of each company needs to define their own, and then you then like that's the where it's get complicated. So the yes is there are, no, because not for everything, not for all aspects of quality, and there is different type of standards for different industries and etc. But it's complicated, and actually eventually you can have as a company your own best practices, and you see different companies taking the standards and adding to it. And actually, again, shameless plug, that's part of what we're doing here at Qodo. For example, sometimes there's, this first step that is really hard. Like, how do I start writing my best practice? One of our tools, Qodo Merge, it's a tool that connects to your GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab. And as the more you use it, you don't need to wait too much time, like a week or two. It starts generating your best practices of your organization. Maybe until we release this episode, we already will have like a hot, warm start where Qodo Merge is going to read backwards the history. So you don't need to wait a week or two. But anyway, it creates the best practice of your organization per repo, per like a piece of your software, because you might have a few pieces with different standards. So you will be surfaced with what your tech lead so far sought, and then you only need to edit it a bit. And that's how we are going to shift and help enterprise and professional dev teams from moving to the yes, no answer to, yeah, it's complicated, but here's a tool that makes it simple for us. So that's what we're planning for the future. But just to one last thing to say, that quality has different aspects, but we have to pursue and get there. It could be how much lines of code are tested with test, how testable is your code, how well it's maintained, and how the structure is well maintained. Is it well reviewed? Are you working according to compliance? It's a difficult task, and that's why I told you that the last mile for solving software, I mean, like having AI helping enterprise companies, not startups or small simple software, solving it end to end. There's a lot to build, a lot still to build there, and that section of the last part of the V structure, software development.
So where are we in this revolution, this AI revolution? So it feels to me like AI has been coming, generative AI landed kind of like the atomic bomb of, awareness in terms of just everybody all of a sudden realizing, okay, now it's here in a form. But now it feels to me like everybody's in a race to figure out what to do. And the packaged versions of these things, the agents that would be, in theory, coming out of all this VC funding, haven't arrived yet. And we're in this kind of middle ground where everybody feels like they need to self-serve something before the packages start to arrive and say, you don't need to build that. We've built it. Here's, whatever it is, Coder, AI, and so what are you seeing in terms of companies? Are they frozen with having almost too many options and not enough prepackaged solutions presented to them? It feels like people are kind of stuck because they don't know what to do, because it's almost like they know they have to do something, but it's almost infinite what they could do.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? I mean, is there just a massive amount of AI coding happening right now, like for their own AI development initiatives?
Yeah. Okay. So I want to relate to two parts. One is to share this three steps to epiphany that I see in enterprise setup. I'm talking about like 250 developers and above. I think, by the way, if you're 2 to 10 developers, whatever, you're probably already pretty happy with the code generation revamp that happened here, revolution, because basically for simple software code generation, all you need, supposedly, like not far from what I just said. But for enterprise, there's much more than that.
That's the rumor, yeah.
Yeah.
You can have it.
Yeah, so I'm going to relate like first to the 3-step to Epiphany that I see in like enterprise dev team, or 250 and above. That's already enough. And then like related to that, I'll like explain a bit about how I see the world of software development with the lens of like AI, like divided into 2 and 2, simple software, complex software, and simple task, complicated task. Okay, and complex task. I'll talk about it. Okay, so first, I think like first like dev teams are coming and saying, "Hey, I want to use AI to do rapid software development." That's the most cases. Like some of them are coming like more prepared. Here's 5 use cases I want to solve, but in most cases they're coming and saying, "Hey, we want to do rapid software development," and then they choose like a few tools. It could be Qodo. It's we love helping with code generation, and there's others that are great as well. And then they explore. Some of them explore like for a little while. Some of them explore for a year, despite what you hear from, I don't know, Copilot announcement, etc. And they might be a client of Copilot, but also a client of many others. But
Sure.
then there's that moment. There's that moment that I see a lot. I just one of the Fortune 10, like it happened to them this week, and we were also like part of that. That they said, okay, it's enough playing. Let's choose this and that and all in. And then suddenly they give like 20,000 developers, or 10,000, and then another 10, like a couple of tools they choose.
So without naming names, where does a decision like that happen? Like how high up did that get to before they finally threw down and said, okay, this is going down the organization?
Yeah, I'll answer that just saying that's step number 2. And after answer, we'll get to
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
no,
I'll tell you.
I don't want to lose that one.
I love it. We know you were here for a discussion. So the way I see it, like, first of all, the developer tools is usually bottom up, right? Usually. And some tools are middle out. Like some tools are purely like the developers asking for something, like they're asking for an IDE. It's usually bottom up. In some cases where it's more like tools that help with like quality, for example, usually it's come middle out. It's come from the tech leads, from the director of software development engineering, from the director of platform engineering, etc. They want to make sure that they don't have like outages, or they won't find themselves in a year from now with all AI writing code. All they do is refactoring and whatever, and so that's like another way. But eventually, after these tools, the first selection are coming bottom up. Usually, like the double down, let's go for it, is actually coming top down, because the information is like being collected from the developers and mostly the tech leads, and then eventually like the CTO or whatever says, okay, I saw enough, and I got confident that this is something we want to do. And the board is pushing me in some cases that we want to move faster, but they won't do a mistake. They have experience. They won't, like, just because the board said it move faster, but they got the confidence that these tools are working pretty well. Some of them reporting after building a use, they collected data for half a year, did A/B testing, etc., and then they click on it from the CTO or VP engineering level, even if in a company of 20,000 developers. The third step is that if in the second step you mostly focus on code generation, okay, that's mostly 2024. I think in 2025 most companies are already hearing about the third step from their friends, but in 2024, after you put a code generation tool as a second step, you realize that an enterprise setup, you're not seeing those features of flying like bugs, or like being created so fastly as you see the Twitter demos, and you realize that something that you already knew, that software development lifecycle is a thing, and it's not only about writing code, it's also about testing, reviewing, etc. And then you understand that you need to put agents or AI assistants throughout the entire software development lifecycle. But it's not enough. To actually make these agents work for you, the enterprise, you need to build your own tools and connect your own tools that are specific for you, and put it and let them connect them into the AI assistant and agents. So it means you're seeing these companies that are in the third stage building like a small team. If they have 10,000 developers, they're building a team of sometimes I see 2 to 3, sometimes 15 that are building tools and connecting to agents. Fortunately, the agents builders like Qodo built their tools, especially recently, that they're connecting well to other tools. For example, with a specific protocol that is called MCP, introduced by Anthropic. So that's a third, like the epiphany that code generation is not all you need. It's like one of the parts, and you need others. And not only that, like you need to put AI into work in other parts of the development lifecycle. But not only that, you will need to invest a bit, because in order to streamline software development, there are some small but yet important critical elements in your own setup software processes that you will need to hook into the agents for them to work like very, very neatly.
I feel like we're in this this middle ground where the awareness happened, and there's a yearning to take advantage of this power, but they don't necessarily have a plan as to how best to do it. Meanwhile, the VCs have been investing, and I think you guys are probably one of them, right? You probably got some venture money, I'm sure, along the way. VCs are investing in all these companies that are creating the tools of the future, the AI tools of the future. And those tools of the future are now going to start arriving because of the cycles. I would say later this year, there's going to be a wave of tools that are going to start arriving that are kind of pre-baked agentic solutions. So you don't, if you've been sitting on the sidelines trying to figure it out, and maybe this is to your simplistic versus more complex paradigm, maybe I'm not quite fitting in there, but it feels like there's going to be a wave of packages, agentic pre-packaged software, kind of like the old school enterprise technologies, like the ERPs and the CRMs, that will arrive and kind of solve a lot of this. You don't have to build it yourself. You just have to implement X number of seats, and we've already got it sorted out. And we've thought of things that you wouldn't even have thought of. Kind of the way cloud came about, right? Cloud was hanging until the cloud and the SaaS model kind of really kicked in.
Look,
do you see that happening, or do you see people just saying, no, we have all the tools we need, we have the developers we need, we're going to build our own stuff?
Oh, okay. So first of all, like definitely, there's some companies in the world that on one hand, they have like a mission of their own. I don't want to mention names, but there's
of course
some of them we're in touch with, but they have their mission. But on the other hand, they have so many engineers, and they love being an engineering company. So they love building their own tools. I'm actually claiming there's no conflict because I want to go back to the 2 and 2 metrics and what I said. So basically, I think what we saw like late 2022 and especially 2023, we saw that AI is helping. Forget about for a second agent assistants. I can talk about it, but let's simplify just AI. So we saw AI is helping with simple task and simple software. And I think what we're seeing in 2024, for example, is that AI is like kind of getting into a place where it's helping with complicated tasks in simple software. What I mean by complicated tasks in simple software is like being able to build the entire website only with one prompt. Eventually, it's not really like that, but not far from that. Like instead of investing like 3 months or 3 weeks to build your own like blog from scratch, if you decided not to use one of the platforms, now it might take you like 3 hours. The first prompt is 3 minutes, but then you go like work with it and fix some stuff. That's amazing. Like it's a complicated task. And then in 2025, we're seeing like early 2025, we're seeing like simple tasks. For example, with agents and AI assistants being done for complicated software. At the end of 2025, I'm not sure if it won't come before, but just to make it a nice timeline, at the end of 2025, we're going to start the beginning of complex tasks in complex software. And as I mentioned before, I think that there are going to be some agents that are plug and play. For example, I can tell you that you can do quite a complicated task with Qodo merge, Qodo gen, Qodo cover. I'm not double clicking on any of them, but each one of them has like a different set of value position, rather around testing, code review, code generation that is in like already high quality, etc. And having said that, to solve that, you do need to I'll give you a specific example. You do need to pull your own tools in it. So whether you are a company that likes to build tools by yourself, I think that's going to be sharpened. That's going to be like you're going to realize that you still need to do that. Hey, but why not exploit all this like technology and frameworks that are built by others that have a lot of resources to do that, and I will work as a dev team in that amazing organization to focus on what I can do, which those tools that could help those agents do their work. But if you're not doing it, doing that because it's not your culture, I think you'll be pushed to do that, because otherwise you won't be able to do complex tasks and complex software, and you would want to, because otherwise you're going to be left behind. So that's how I see it. And just to give an example, let's say that you have some, complicated databases, and you can think of some tool that knows how to verify that for specific SQL, I don't know, like query, the database is going to survive. And you guys, like this team, collected this tribal even knowledge for 20 years. How did this database work well for us? They can build tool and give that tool to the agent. So when it's developing code or reviewing code, it will at the right moment exploit that tool and won't try to guess it like statistically with LLM. So like just one example. There are plenty of these, and you need the dev team to build that, and you won't want to leave it for the vendor to guess it for you.
So you are in the middle of this, and you are in the middle of your career as well. So you're kind of in the perfect confluence of technological advancement and career advancement for you. Take a step back as to when you started, back in the 2000s, I guess, probably when you were a young guy getting into technology. What's the path now for somebody? Because it used to be that your path in was you're the code checker. You're going to do all the stuff that was hard and mundane and redundant, and that was how you were going to get a toehold into a dev team. Is you were going to do all the low level stuff that now, in theory, AI does better than any junior dev, entry level person. So what would you say to somebody who's saying, great for you, you're in the middle of it, you're right where you want to be, but I can't find a way in anymore because it's all going to be agentic. Is that, do you see that as or do you have any advice for people who are trying to get, who I want to be in tech too, but I don't know how I don't know where the bottom of the rungs are anymore in the ladder, because it feels like they're all being automated away.
Yeah. So it's very hard to predict, especially the future. So I'm going to focus first on the next 5 years. And if you want, I can double click on the next 5 years.
The next 5 years is plenty.
Okay, cool. So please bear with me. I'm going to visualize a 3-dimension graph, but I'm going to start with 2. Hey, and my background is machine learning, statistics. So everything is with positive samples, negative samples, graphs, vectors. Sure. Okay, so let's start with 2-dimension. One, the x-axis is like the seniority. Are you a junior, mid-seniority, a tech lead or whatever, like at the end. And y-axis is like how many lines of code you wrote that actually went into production. In my opinion, by the way, I'm sure there's some research, but I even didn't bother to check. I feel strongly about it. You will see like a Gaussian. It means that both edges, like the junior and the seniors, don't push a lot of code to production, and the mid-senior push the most. Why? Because the seniors, they write less code, but also they spend a lot of time to review and monitor and mentor the mid-seniority and the juniors. The juniors are a bit too junior to actually push code to production. Okay. Now, I think that first of all, with AI, what's interesting that's going to happen is that a lot of the code that the mid seniority are writing is going to be pushed. Let's say that there's like one, you want to have unit one, like under the graph, there's only, you want to have one unit. Then a lot of the code that's written, more code is going to be written by the tech leads and less by the mid seniority. Considering, if you consider that AI code that was written in the name of or by the command of the tech leads are theirs, I think you're going to see this Gaussian like being pushed the hill a bit more flat and go into the seniors, because they're going to have an army of like mid seniors AI developers that are just going to do whatever they're saying, and they can review them their code. So that's one thing that's going to change. Hey, but what about the juniors? We just said it's going to be hard. It seems to be even harder. So now I'm going to add the third dimension. Okay. The third dimension is what I mentioned before, that let's put also simple software and complex software, like on the third dimension. The interesting thing is that I think that today, actually, junior developers can write much more code in simple software. So they can almost ramp up by themselves and they don't need too much monitoring. So basically you start as a junior developer. You start, by doing much more code and more simple software. You actually can learn much faster. AI can teach you, and it's even getting better. You become a mid-senior developer, and then you start writing more complex code, and you move to tech lead. So I think like the journey changed, but I wouldn't give up. That's like 5 years, okay? Now, I don't know if you wanted to double click on 10 years, but so I'll say it only on one sentence. Okay, hard to say. I think that basically the profession is going to change a lot, because the tools are going to be so good in writing code, but also checking code. So like humans are going to use AI to do much more complicated tasks than allowing to be a bit like, poetic, writing software that drives Teslas and drones, whatever, on Mars, and doing software that helps like solving hard parts and medical like breakthroughs and etc. So we're just gonna look really different. Maybe like in connecting into like you're gonna code also like in very specific field, not just software. It's like we're gonna be coding for physics, and things like that. So I think like it's gonna be crazy. Like the profession is going to change a lot. So we can like talk about it. It's like it's more like philosophy at this point.
Well, philosophically, I love this conversation. So I'll push your buttons a little bit more. Do people need to go to technological institutes to learn this anymore? Are they going to need to in the next 5 years, or is this something where to your point, you're going to learn so much quicker and be able to have so much more practical competence from AI that you don't need to go to university anymore? You don't need to. I mean, do you double click on that?
Yeah, people are saying that for a while now. Like, I don't want to mention names, but I see like some influencers that, I mean, like not like educated and well-known influencers saying that university is dead or etc. And I'm not saying not, but let me tell you what I think is that the importance of being adaptable, like being able to adapt to new situation, the importance of learning is only going to increase. Yes, you would have better learning like tools, but you need to adapt and learn much faster than before. So to some extent, there is some advantage of doing that in universities or colleges, whatever, because that's exactly the idea there. And some of them are actually, understanding or agreeing or with what I'm saying. So they also like shift their own like materials, courses, like the way they teach this way. I know from a few associate professors and professors in university that are thinking this way. So I don't think it's like I wouldn't underestimate the power of being focused on learning in university, and at the same time I do agree that you can learn it these skills also outside university, where maybe before like 50 years ago exaggerating it intentionally. Like you have to go to university because maybe just the materials are only there.
Correct.
You need to go to the
Correct.
library. So
That's
like I
exactly it.
think, yeah. So I think like I wouldn't underestimate like going, because you can learn a lot of skills there, but definitely like you probably can learn that out of university as well.
No, it's interesting. There is we just did a survey actually at Inside Jam with an e-learning partner, that the take was very much around how you now need more soft skills, this big five
Yeah.
personality type, that there's, the ability to adapt and the ability to have curiosity and the very human skills that can be developed that you do need, whereas you may not necessarily need the raw technical training, because AI can help you with that in a much more kind of rapid and interactive way than, but without that human behavioral maturity, that you will find it hard.
Yeah.
It's an interesting perspective that maybe universities do need to change in terms of
Yeah.
how they're.
I think some of them are. That's what maybe I just believing, but that's what I hear. By the way, like for the sake of the discussion, I can also argue that also soft skills are overrated. Again, not saying 5 years,
I
but
want to hear it.
but 10 years, 15 years. Who said that robots cannot be more compassionate? Like cannot, maybe they actually, maybe actually they have,
By being completely agreeable all the time for the most part.
or by the way, being exactly that what would work best for you. For some people, being like agreeing all the time, maybe it's the best fit. For others, maybe like agreeing most of the time, but fighting with you or disagreeing on some parts would be most teachable or appealing or satisfying for you. And why not? You would be able to tune that. Maybe they will be able to understand themselves to some extent. And I think like some people are some people are really assholes, and I don't know, like maybe some AI could be better than them. And so like I can argue that soft skills are might be also overrated, but I don't, but I'm saying it just for the sake of making like a good discussion. I still think that's very important to skills that we need to progress with, like, and teach our kids, etc.
So you opened up the concept of more future vision around robots, and I want to kind of drill down on that. If I get you to kind of continue to kind of think out you have a perspective on this, and I'm sure you're seeing things that are being built that are intended for that end. Where do you see us in terms of interacting with technology? Is it, are there going to be, as they say, millions and millions of agents kind of all over the place, and some, quite frankly, doing a lot of the jobs that currently exist? And do you see, which I think, some of the larger tech players like Tesla, for instance, are saying, we're building robots because we know we're going to literally build millions of robots that are going to be all over the place because people are going to want them. I mean, where do you see it all going? I mean, it's a crazy. I've never seen a revolution like this. And I'm older than you. I've seen a lot of revolutions. I saw the PC revolution. I saw the web revolution. I've never seen anything like this. This is a whole different thing.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I'm kind of going to avoid a direct answer and giving 2 points of evidence, but I will answer eventually.
Yeah.
So on one hand, look, like I think like people are still flipping burgers in like 99% of places. Why?
Of course.
Like
right.
why?
Right.
Like really why? This is a machine that can be solved. Like it's a really interesting question. I think I'm sure like if I ask ChatGPT and they like maybe I get some answer. And on the other hand, you have like Jensen from NVIDIA mentioning in one of the latest conferences saying that very sooner or later, NVIDIA is going to have like 100 million agents working for NVIDIA, while there be, I'm not sure I'm quoting accurately, like around 100,000 employees, human employees in NVIDIA. But by the way, what does it mean 100 million agents? Because like I'll try to explain for those that it's not clear. Maybe there will be like 5,000 types, but each one of them to work requires a hardware and B energy. So it means like just for the sake of an example, maybe there will be like tens of thousands instances for each one of those types, and accumulatively, it will reach to 100 million agents that you can put an ID on that's actually working for NVIDIA and that worthwhile economically for the compute and energy. And when you think like on that, that's a lot of work. Like if an agent is kind of doing a human work, by the way, in some cases, maybe it can do faster, slower, but just let's assume that it could do it at the same speed, just for simplicity. And it means like there are going to be 100 million AI jobs being done on NVIDIA, meaning what for us? Less jobs. I like we can talk about it. Maybe it will create more jobs. So I think like there's two conflicts here. And I believe that this conflict, again, it really depends, in my opinion, if you're talking about 5, 10, 15, 25 years, it does matter. But if you go to 10 years, I still think there's going to be a lot of in jobs that are going to being replaced, a lot of jobs that are going to be reinvented, a lot of jobs are going to be created, and a lot of interactions, a lot between AI and HI, like artificial intelligence and human intelligence, like embodiments. Again, 10 years. So that's like how I see it. I think the really interesting question is like how are we going to deal with 2041? I chose 2041 because I'm like quoting the book 2041, and 41 is like looks like AI.
Yeah.
Or maybe like there's so much automation at this level, so much prosperity, like so much like that maybe that we'll need to change society in ways that are being discussed. I'm not the first that are going to like talk about it here, like universal base income salary. I have a feeling that it's going to be national base income, like per country, per state, even depends where the AI is running and who is like suffering more or less from that. That's my guess. And like a lot of things we usually think as people of 40 years, whatever happened in the last 40 years is going to stay. No, like the way that our government worked, like changed throughout the centuries, and it did change. Who said that now it's the end? No, like I feel that this is technology. The same reason for that a lot of change because of the industrial revolution and things like that enable us to democracy, in my opinion. So I think like this revolution will probably push us to a new type of government, actual government, like way of governing probably change by 2041.
So I want to take a step back. So in talking to you, I mean, you're obviously passionate, and it strikes me that you're right exactly where you want to be in the middle of all this, and you've thought a lot about, not only what you're trying to solve today and in the office with your colleagues, but just how the world is going to reshape and how it's going to be influenced. And I'm curious, when did when you think back as a young guy, when did you say to yourself, I think I want to be in technology? Do you remember what it was? Was there one thing? Do you remember what it was that kind of turned you on to going down a technology path?
I don't think I ever shared it online. I never thought if it's the right thing to do, but I'm going to go for it. So basically, very embarrassing. When I was a kid or so, I got an opportunity to join a new school, and there wasn't any like computer system. We're talking about the 90s yet, and like one of the teacher asked, "Does anybody know, what's DOS or Windows?" It was like whatever 3.1 or whatever.
Yeah, 3.1.
He didn't say the 3.1. He just said, "Who knows what is a Windows?" And I was like, "I know what is a window. Yeah, I obviously like I know window. I didn't point at it." But I was like one of 3 people that were like kind of like as a kid, like raising it. Why you don't know what's the window? Like, and then like that I was so funny for that teacher. I raised my hand, so he took me as a project.
Is that right?
Yeah. Like the other two really knew,
And did you and did you immediately kind of think, well, this is great. I
yeah,
like
it's
this. I'm good
fascinating.
at it.
No, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. It was fascinating, that computer. Like, I'm not saying that I didn't like. I had a computer. I don't remember if it was 386 or 486. I don't remember. Like, I think it was one of them, and we play like, we used Einstein, right, and like as a writing your docs or whatever, like, and also the Space Invaders and things like that, but I didn't do too much with it, I have to say, until that teacher opened my eyes, like showing me a lot of stuff. And it was the first time I saw Windows, by the way. Like before that, I think it would exist for a while, but I didn't never seen it.
Yeah, but 3.1 was what I remember. 3.1. That was the first time a computer really worked, other than the
Yeah,
Macs, their first Macs. But
yeah,
a DOS-based computer really functioned
yeah. That's why I'm
intuitively.
saying like that was like a different, like, to my eyes, was a very different moment than
The
using
GUI.
the terminal and using Einstein and using Space Invaders, like playing Space Invaders, then suddenly like seeing this GUI, and that was fascinating. And then from there, I started learning about networks, because we connected the computers for the school, and like a lot of things, like how do you make a recovery, and how do you, like, there are so many things that we've done there. So it was fascinating. And fast forward, like just one year or two later, I was already like in the 90s as a kid, like building a website for living, and even like doing like Flash and like Java on like the on the browser, whatever it was. Like that was really like unique.
Yeah,
And
Flash
yeah, so
back in
that's
the
what.
days. Both
Yeah,
Flash. Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
So
do you
that
remember?
was there.
Was that when you got the entrepreneur bug as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's not that at that moment I thought to myself, I want to solve software and build Qodo, build Qodo
No.
as the last piece of
Yeah,
software
yeah.
that you need in the world. It's not like I'm exaggerating a bit. Like it's not that it was there, but entrepreneurial bug was made there for sure.
So you're building a business. You've built a few others. Am I right? I mean, you've been in big organizations and
Yeah,
started
right.
things as well. How do you think about building a business, like culturally? Well, I mean, world of work. Do you? It seems like almost everybody has kind of adopted the virtual, and I think in the software development space, virtual was, even prior to the pandemic, was more of a prominent way to interact. How do you feel about how you create collaboration, and while everybody might be virtual, or do you go into the office? I mean, how do you think about the current world of work?
Yeah, sure. So I really love the book Amp It Up by Frank Slootman. He manages to explain uh, important concepts and really simple words, and I think that's like a very important capability of a leader, and in the world, trying to simplify concepts. Like I think Einstein said that if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it. So I think like Frank says something as simple as following, which sounds obvious, but it takes a lot to really digest and do it. That execution eats strategy for breakfast, because a good strategy is the one that you can execute. I can elaborate on that. But moreover, culture eats execution for breakfast, because if you want to build something meaningful, you need to execute a long time, and that requires the right culture. So basically, culture eats execution for breakfast, and an execution eats strategy for dinner or whatever. And now about your question, then you realize that culture is everything. And if you think about Steve Jobs, like he built Apple as a product. It means he built like the culture of Apple. So it's like the famously being people say like, are you building the capability to predict the time? Or are you building a clock? Or are you building like a factory for building clocks? Like it depends on what you're trying to achieve. And if you want to be able to like being able to predict time again and again and again, you build a clock, right? So if you want to nail it with the iPad and with the the music one. iPod, yeah, I forgot. Like maybe first the iPod and then the iPhone and then the iPad, etc. You build a clock that's able to predict the next, and not necessarily just. And that's like the importance of culture is like very, very, very clear to me at this point of building businesses. By the way, I love that you said building and not running, because we're building a startup. A startup means you're trying to build something that grows exponentially or really quickly, and not necessarily like a family business or so. So bottom line, culture is very important, and yes, like it's one of those things that you need to invest in all the time if you want to build a clock or the clock factory and not just predict the time once or so.
How do you help people absorb a culture if they are remote or not necessarily coming in and getting that organic mentorship and honestly that indirect cultural, like I think one of the things that Apple did very well with regard to that is create a campus like cultural touchstone, and ultimately, realized it in that donut that they built in San Francisco, but which probably is empty most of the time now. But to my point, it's like it feels like it's much harder to get cultural homogeny from remote work because you're not in it.
So I didn't relate to that point intentionally. I'll explain, because it serves like to point by itself. Okay, so I think different companies would work better with different cultures. I wouldn't. I'll get to the remote thingy. Okay, I promise. So I wouldn't build the same culture for Netflix and SpaceX, for example, or Tesla or Facebook. One can move fast and break things, and the other cannot. One, Netflix, the worst thing that can happen almost is that you won't have like the streaming for a few minutes. For some people, it might be very important. I'm not saying not, but as opposed to, the missile, like making mistakes and landing in LA or whatever. So different, even if it's the same people, by the way, you need different culture. So for some companies, you would want to people in the office. For some companies, maybe remote is being better. Like, I don't know, if I would build Zoom, I would build it remotely, right? And by the way, I heard, sorry that I'm not sure about it. I hope I'm not wrong. I heard that GitHub, for example, is like a lot about remote. I'm not sure about if it's right or wrong. Like, and to some extent, like GitHub is about collaboration between developers. So maybe actually it does make sense. But again, I have like a feeling that it wouldn't be an easy decision, but it would be an easy decision. For example, Zoom. Okay, if I would build Zoom, I'd do that remotely for sure. So I just want to say, like, I don't think there is one answer. For example, I think for some companies, if you're building if you want to build a strong global culture, just one aspect of culture, right? Then I would actually go for hybrid. Why? Like, again, it depends. Like, building Zoom is also kind of all global, so roughly speaking. Why? Because if some of the time, like, even those people who are coming to the office are not in the office, they understand much more easily what's not working for those that are not in the office or in a different office. So in hybrid, you would find, for example, people documenting and explaining themselves much more than not. So I actually am not sure that that's the right thing to do, to tell everyone to come to the office 5 days a week. Okay, just like think what are your values? What is the expectation in the market? Who are your people? What kind of product you're building? What's important for your business? And then design your own culture, whether remote or not, or hybrid or not, depends on that.
Yeah, this has been great. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time. I know you're a busy guy and you're doing a lot of interesting things, but you took an hour and shared a lot of information. I feel like we could keep going, but I'm gonna respect the little blinking hour indicator. But yeah, thanks very much,
Thank you so
Itamar.
much.
It was a pleasure, and best of luck with everything you're doing. And I have a feeling that we're going to be hearing a lot more from you. So
Thank you,
enjoy the rest of the year.
It was a pleasure, and thank you.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.